time it is. Marvin Devine, Huber, Axel, and you know how we do. Yeah, I got the juice. Whip game cool, make them look like cool. Always play it cool, that's the biggest rule. Forget what they doing, keep on doing. I've been making loot since like 22. Ask me how I made it right here in the booth. I'm always pursued cause of what I pursue. That's greatness, yeah, I gotta make it, I got things to lose. Boy, wanna get in my crew, but you can't get in my crew. Me, XL, and Uber, way too fireable. When this joint drop, better call the troops. And when you hear the drop, better raise the roof. Better raise the roof. You already know what happens when we link up. Let's go. Yeah, I got the juice. Yeah, I got the juice. Big game cool, make them look like cool. Always play it cool, that's the biggest rule. Forget what they doing, keep on doing.
I'm addicted to the good life. Yeah, lead the way, I follow. No need to say, with me you're heading now, babe. I follow to the edge of it all, to the edge of it all. So tell your good night, 'cause I'll find no better one, yeah. Susceptible now, before the moment flies. Ooh, so tell your good night, 'cause I'll find no better one. Ooh, susceptible now, before the moment flies. It's not a problem, no, 'cause I know what I'm getting into. Yes, yeah, and nothing can stop me, no, 'cause I'm addicted to what you and I realize. Lead the way, I follow. No need to say, with me you're heading now, babe. I follow to the edge of it all. So tell your good night, 'cause I'll find a better one, yeah. Susceptible.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Locked In Podcast, episode 249. Back on the mic tonight. I want to welcome back in my brother, Rich. What's going on, bro? Thank you for joining tonight.
What's up, man? It's always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, man. Appreciate the support, man. Rich, the OG to the podcast, 5+ years, man. You were one of the OGs coming on here, so I think the first time you ever came on was probably a sports episode, man. Way back. I'm talking like 2020.
Yeah,
so,
man.
Appreciate you coming on, man, and being a regular supporter. But tonight, guys, not talking any sports. We're talking the importance of therapy for men. We're going to talk about why it's important and also what are some of the benefits. As you know, with masculinity and like what is taught in traditional norms, a lot of times there's a big stigma when it comes to therapy, specifically for men. We're going to tell you why therapy is actually a very beneficial thing, why more men are actually doing this today now than ever before, since past generations like baby boomers and stuff like that. Therapy was often considered a last resort, especially for men, but things are changing, and we're going to talk about why that's good and what the benefits are. So, as you know, Rich is in his final area of studying for you could tell them, bro. I'll let you kind of tell the audience what you're studying.
Right. Yeah. So hopefully my volume and everything's right. But yeah, man. LMFT is the goal. But I'm just a few weeks away from getting my licensed associate marriage and family therapy license. So at that master's level clinician, and I'm almost at the end of the road for school.
Yeah, man. Congratulations early, man. I know it's been a long road, man, but you're almost at the end of the tunnel here, man. I'm about to hit that finish line. So, an early congratulations to you, bro.
Yeah, man. Thank you, man. It's just been a long road, a heavy road. Move states to, sometimes you got to move locations to take that leap and trust yourself. So that's what I did. I'm happily here in Jersey and looking forward to just keep growing.
Yeah, man. Betting on yourself. I like it. But here we are. But honestly, I think the field that you're going to be providing counsel, providing like therapy services in is like it's a big one. Marriage, family therapy, that's a big area, and a lot of people can benefit from counseling. There's probably a lot of marriages that probably could have been saved from therapy, to be honest with you. So a lot of some of the biggest issues when it comes to marriage are one of the big ones we've talked on here before are of course financially, but communication too. Being able to get on the same page and being able to communicate with one another, that's one of the biggest struggles in a lot of marriages, as I'm sure you're aware of. So being able to have a third party that's neutral and be able to communicate in that setting, it's big, man. So you're definitely making a difference in that field.
Yeah, man. And we find like some of the things that you just mentioned, Steve, a lot of it is like connected to certain patterns as well. If you're talking biblically, a lot of that stuff is like connected to like pride, right? Like financial, wanting to have your finances in this perfect place, right? That's kind of almost like a form of pride, right? Because we want to take pride in our finances. We want to take pride as men in being providers, right? And being able to if your family asked you for anything, hey, I got it for you. So a lot of these conflicts in terms of financials within marriage, a lot of conflicts in terms of communication, a lot of it, man, biblically can be tied to pride, if we're going that route. But yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that a lot of the stigma around therapy for men is pride. You know what I mean? A lot of men, pride and ego, and a lot of it also stems from how we were raised, right? If you're raised in a household where you were taught to kind of, what are some of the terms, like suck it up, or like, you're not allowed to really express your emotions. This is all of it. But honestly, then what happens is a lot of these men go into marriages or even just, the workforce, like or even just with friendships, and they don't know how to communicate. They really don't know how to openly communicate. It strains not only a marriage or a relationship, but it strains connections in the workforce. It strains friendships. A lot of it. This is where the struggles come in, and then you have even leaders in the workforce that don't know how to communicate to their team. Right? If you're like a manager or a leader, there's a lot of different things that come with this, and we're going to talk about like the benefits that come with this. But um, I was someone that didn't try therapy until I was 31. So I'm 33 now. I was 31, almost 32 when I first did it. So a little over a year and a half. But what I will say is it's a little daunting at first, for sure, because you have to be open, and it goes deep. And therapy, Rich can tell you this too, is only going to go as far as you're willing to actually give it. So, like, what I mean by that is how open you're willing to be, because you could go into therapy and you could just be wearing a mask and lying and, like, not really being open and honest in order to not face true vulnerability. So it's gonna therapy is going to be beneficial, but it's not a magic wand, right? Like, it's about the work that you're willing to put in therapy. Um, but what I will say is, on the other side of that, is there's a lot of great benefits that comes from it. You know what I mean? There's a lot, and everybody, and I always say everybody. I believe everybody has some sort of trauma. It could be very minimum trauma, but everybody has something. And I think that therapy can be beneficial for anybody, no matter how well you're thriving or how successful you are. I always believe that therapy can be helpful.
Yeah, Steve, I completely agree. And just going into some of the things you said right there, I mean, the benefits of therapy are like endless, man. I'm talking about new strategies and just daily living, self care. You get new ideas of new concepts of how just to navigate life, but also you get that person with that listening ear who's indifferent. You know that, like, once they give you your opinions, they're not necessarily going to have a motive, right? They don't have a dog in the fight in terms of personally benefiting from you making a significant life decision. So you're getting an opinion that's not biased, right? Or someone who you can fully open up to, someone who you can talk to, who's willing to listen to you. And then on top of that, you do have the ability to kind of think outside the box, and have someone else come to you with a certain level of expertise, that can kind of help you brainstorm. I know that the big argument with a lot of men who don't want to go to therapy is that, oh, it's a complete waste of money just for someone to tell me something that I already know. Really, that's not what it's about. Really, it's about self growth. And sometimes self growth causes us or requires for us to take a hard look in the mirror at things that maybe by ourselves we could easily chalk it up to, hey, maybe this is something temporary, or this is something I'll get over real quick. It's not a big deal, right? But lo and behold, when you dig a little bit deeper beneath the surface and you're working with an expert, they're going to challenge you to do certain things that maybe by yourself you wouldn't be willing to do on your own.
Exactly. And see, to anybody, you're right. A lot of men do say that. I don't want to pay for someone to essentially tell me something I already know. Okay. Well, what I would challenge is, you may know it, but what are you doing to work towards it, right? What are you doing to heal those things if you know it? So, see what I'm saying? Like, a lot of times is we may know we have specific trauma, and there might be trauma below the surface that we may have suppressed, right? That we may actually have forgotten about. But what I would say there is, we're probably not using healthy coping mechanisms, right? We're probably not really facing it. Yeah, we know we have it, but are we facing it? Therapy helps teach you healthy coping mechanisms that you can utilize to be able to kind of deal with it instead of just pushing it aside. You see what I'm saying? That's why I would challenge people. And some people might just still brush it off. And that just means they're not ready. You know what I mean? Like, you pray for people and you just hope that eventually they will be, but you can't force anybody. They have to be self-aware enough to recognize that there's an issue, and, hey, I don't want to live like this anymore. Like, I want to make a change.
Yeah, most definitely, Steve. I mean, what we find with a lot of our men and women who aren't willing to take that step is usually, they're just not ready, and that's okay. You know what I mean? You really want to make sure that, one, you're willing. That's the number one thing. Mentally, are you willing to go to therapy? And you have to ask yourself the hard questions if you're not there yet, though. Why is it that I'm not willing to open up if I do think that it's going to be a circumstance where I'm going to be challenged, or I think it's not going to be anything that's going to add to my life. Well, then if that's the case, then hey, why not give it a try? Why not? I mean, we try so many different things in life, right? That we feel like maybe it won't benefit us, or we know it doesn't benefit us, but we don't ever kind of challenge ourselves to open up our minds, right? And open up things that can help us grow that may be a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that us as human beings, I think we should always be in a constant state of growth, right? We should never be like, hey, I'm here, I made it, I'm healthy, because things change over time, Steve. So life, especially with how the economy is going, right? Especially with how the dating scene is going, right, in our society, things fluctuate on a constant basis. And sometimes people's mental health change week to week sometimes, man. So I think it's important to always be honest with yourself, always have those check-ins with yourself and ask yourself, hey, do I need someone to talk to? Why is life seem a little bit difficult for me, and things that maybe normally I would be able to, thoroughly navigate. Or maybe I haven't really ever learned how to navigate a certain situation. Why is that? So that's what therapy kind of helps us do, is it kind of helps us navigate. It's not here to be a, hey, I'm going to show up and, hey, let me take this medicine and I'm cured, or let me go through this session and then I'm cured. Everything, life is just, perfect. No, but it does give you the tools to learn how to navigate life yourself, and it does give you a listening ear. So it teaches you how to work through your own things. It's not here to work through them for you.
It's so true. Yeah, it's here to work for you. But yeah, life changes, and I like that part that you said. It's and what is the hurt of it, right? To try something. So that's why I say, like, you don't ever want to stay. At least I personally don't. I don't ever want to stay in a spot where I'm stagnant, right? I've had periods of my life where I was relatively stagnant. It's not something that I so if there's any way to better yourself, I feel like the hard work. Anytime you want to grow or be better, it does require some hard work. I'd be lying to you if I said that every time I go into therapy, still, I've been doing therapy for a year and a half, and I've been like a little over a year with the same therapist. I would say this, like, it still is a little bit of a gut punch, before you go into those sessions, especially if you're going to go deep in those sessions. I'm not going to lie to you, but I always feel better on the other side of it. Like, right, like, hey, I don't know if I feel like fully going today, but then I always know that when I go to these sessions, like, I feel good on the other side of it. I can go to the gym, right, and get a physical workout. I can, pray to God and get a spiritual workout, right? Like, in a way, you're diving into scripture, you're praying, but like, you can get like literally a mental workout by like going to therapy. Like this, it helps you unpack things. And what I will say is, one of the big benefits, we'll get into the benefits, but one of the big ones is emotional maturity. The emotional maturity that you're able to regulate. Me and Rich were just talking about this a little earlier about your nervous system, right? Being able to regulate your nervous system. And literally you can do that by going to therapy. Like, it teaches you these coping. So then say you're a husband, right? You get married, right? Or you're just in a relationship. You're not even married. You can be a better partner as a man because you can be more emotionally mature. You're not going to be as so quick to be. A lot of men, this is a common stigma for men. A lot of men out there are very emotionally unavailable. Now, I'm not saying all men. I'm not even saying, a ton of men. I'm just saying there's, I think now that more men are going to therapy, the numbers are decreasing, but there's a lot of very emotionally unavailable men out there. And a lot of it is because that's how we were taught, right? Like when we were younger, you work, you provide, and that's it. There's more that goes into, especially if you want to get married and have a long-term marriage. Like I said, communication is a big reason why marriages fail. There's a lot more that goes into you just providing. You also need to be able to have emotional maturity to be able to navigate the emotional stuff too. So I will say there's a lot of positive things that come from therapy. A lot of men feel like they don't have this outlet too, even though a lot more men are going to therapy. Rich, I don't know if you see this, but we were in a connect group together last year, me and Rich, through Fusion Church, and that was a men's group, solely a men's group. But pretty much all the guys in the group were all in therapy. But if I'll be honest with you, a lot of the guys that I'm surrounded by, right? Like in our group, right, Rich, like the group that we share, a lot of guys, they don't go to therapy, right? Like they just don't. They're still great guys. Like they just don't. It's so there are still men that are still not going, but I just hearing from how like the men that were in our oh, I think my thing went out for a second. Can you hear me? Okay. Um yeah, for a lot of the men that that were in that group last year, you just see like a lot of those guys are husbands, or not all of them are, and maybe some of them are just dads, right? Um, there's just a lot of we would talk in that group about, especially like Nate, he would say a lot of men feel that they're not allowed to express their emotions, or they're not allowed to express their feelings, or it's unmasculine to do so. And it's really actually the opposite, in my opinion. I think that it actually makes you more masculine to be able to do that. I still think that you can be a leader, you can still be stoic, you can still lead your family as a man and be able to express yourself. Like people think being emotional means you're on your knees begging and crying, and like, no, that's not what it's about. It's just being able to communicate your feelings and your needs to those around you, because your wife or your friends or your family, they're not going to know what you need if you can't communicate. But we have this stigma that like we're tough and we don't need to talk about how we feel, and we just suck it up and we throw it on our back. But then at the same time, we're drowning. Like we're literally drowning, but it's just that, that feeling like you feel like you can't express yourself. And I would say there are a lot of outlets out there. And when you start to understand that it doesn't make you any weaker as a man to be able to express what you need, you start to realize the benefits.
Yeah, man. And quick note before I give my part here. Thank you, Motal, for the congrats. But I did want to say, modern men, I think, have to have that conversation of in what context and what setting is safe to share my feelings, because I do feel like modern men, especially younger ones, I'm just going to throw some statistics here. The age factors indicate that younger men, ages 18 to 44, are more likely to seek therapy, and that's about 17.8% compared to older men, right? So it's definitely a generational thing, but also we have to be quite aware of men are watching, right? When our public figures, when our celebrities, or when, just any kind of, big media figure is sharing their emotions, what usually happens? They're usually clowned for it, right? If we're being honest about it. Like if there's a real emotionally vulnerable situation, typically it's not really a good idea to share out your business, right? To share your full emotions with the public, right? So I think that we're trying to encourage men to share their emotions and be honest, but do it in the right context, right? So we're talking about in a therapy setting, right? We're talking about in a private setting with someone who's expert, who is there to listen to you, who is trained in how to navigate self care, how to navigate different areas of mental breakdown, right, and development. So we're not encouraging men to just share your emotions with everyone, right? Or share your emotions with people who are outside of your safety net, right? Or your safety zone, because there are people who are safe to share your emotions with, but there are people who are not safe to share your emotions with as well. So we just wanted to get that out of the way, Steve, before we proceed further, and say that, yeah, also it is masculine to share your emotions and share how you feel, because what's the alternative? Right? What's the alternative of what men have been doing when they don't have that outlet? Usually, it's substance abuse, as we've come to see it. Substance abuse is one form of outlet that men sometimes, a lot of men do just up and leave. Their situations, if they're not able to communicate within their marriages or in their relationships. We've seen men have a history of just leaving, right? Situations. We've seen situations where men tend to break down or lash out after holding their emotions in for a long period of time. So it is more masculine to go seek help, seek professional help in terms of being able to communicate those emotions and those feelings or those things where you feel like maybe, the world isn't the world or the people in your situation or, whatever internal barriers to self growth you have there, you know, those things got to be confronted. And you want to do that with a professional.
Facts. 100%. Very well put, bro. Um, very well put. Yeah, it's first of all, I'm gonna say to Zach, what's up, brother? He said, "What's good? What's up, my guy Zach?
Zach,
Cali Zach, what's up, brother?" And thanks, Licorice over here, Mota. At least I'm not sure who you are, but I just want to say thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Thank you.
absolutely.
Um, yeah, man, very well put. Like you're right that like what happens when men don't have the outlet, right? Completely true. It's like a lot of times men bottle it up, but then it comes out later in anger, aggression. It could come out in a man lashing out. It could come in substance abuse. Like you said, it could be drowning himself in alcohol or drugs or whatever their vice is. Could be pornography, gambling, whatever it is. There's a lot of vices out there. Um, and there's a lot of health issues that come with constantly carrying stress, right? There's a lot of health issues, and we'll get into that too. But it's just when you don't have an outlet, it becomes problematic. And like I said, I think a lot of men they think like, oh, it's sissy or it's weak or it's to go to therapy. Think of it as an outlet to be able to communicate what you need. And that's how I take it. It doesn't mean you have to be weak. It doesn't mean you have to be passive. That's not what it's about. If anything, it's actually going to make you confront things and be direct. That's what you want as a man. I think a lot of men have a thought process of what masculinity looks like, and it's a lot of it is performative masculinity. They act super tough, or they act like they have to be super hard and like over the top, and it's like a lot of it is actually really fragile egos and insecurity. You know what I mean? When you're truly confident with yourself as a man and you can communicate your needs, you don't care. Like if somebody told me like, oh, like that's sissy or it's weak to go to therapy. I've even had some people like, that I'm friends with, just like slightly like joke around, like, yeah, they're kind of like how you said, like, why should I go to somebody, pay to go to somebody that's going to tell me what I already know? It's you get like the slight jokes and stuff about it. I'm comfortable with who I am, so like those type of things don't faze me. But I was always someone too that kind of looked at therapy like a different way, like almost like it was a female thing to go to therapy. But what I can say is you don't really know till you experience it. That's what I would say. You don't know until you experience it. So that's why I will always advocate. I'm like, hey, it makes you try. And here's the thing, like I said, I went into it open, like willing to, because there were things in my life that I wanted to fix. So what I would say, if you're going into therapy, have a game plan of something that you're trying to heal in your life, right? Like maybe it's setting boundaries. Maybe it's, I don't know, just being able to express yourself more. Whatever it is, like you should have a game plan when you're going in, because your therapist is going to ask you, what do you hope to gain from, the sessions? So you should have a game plan of what you want to go through. A lot of people, Rich, like we said, they're walking around here with these childhood wounds or past relationship wounds and things that are just unhealed, and they're not fully walk into any type of relationship, whether it's especially romantic relationships, because that requires a lot of deep intimacy, but to have true connecting friendships too. I mean, if you have true friendships where you're able to be open with your friends, I mean, like real, um, these types of things, these are the types of things therapy can help you with. Maybe being able to have open conversations with your family, like, but I would say for sure romantic relationships, because you have to be, I firmly believe that truly fulfilling romantic relationships, like you have to have emotional connection with the person. And I don't mean highs and lows. I don't mean like all this. I mean like deep actual connection with the person where you can communicate together. That's really, really important, and therapy can help with that. So,
Yeah, man, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually brought on this podcast 3 books with me that are one for men specifically, and 2 just for couples or whoever is trying to get through that kind of like shtick of trying to understand each other more, trying to grow more together and have that intentionality. So my first one is the disciples of a godly young man. This is like a good Christian book for men who are trying to grow and big on self growth, who are trying to strengthen their relationship with God, but also navigate kind of the modern day situation that we find ourselves in here in this country. And then another one is obviously, and I've said this, uh, I've always promoted this book in the past on these podcasts, and that's Five Love Languages, right? So we're
Cool.
talking about the words of affirmation, the acts of service, the receiving gifts, the quality time, and the physical touch. This is like a big by Gary Chapman, by the way. This is a huge, huge, huge book for any couple. I think you should read it if you're having issues understanding each other, needs wise. I think it's a really awesome book. I think every couple or every aspiring couple should read this book together 100%. And then the last one is one you actually told me about today, and this is the one. So it's the 9 essential conversations before you say I do. This is like again for any couple or anyone who's like trending in that direction. You want to make sure you're intentional about these things, because um, the best way to avoid difficult situations and arguments is to prevent it from happening in the first place. And the way that you prevent it from happening in the first place is you're intentional about understanding each other, right? You're intentional about kind of walking through that, even in the early stages. I think the earlier the better. You want to set that tone of, hey, look, hey, it's important um, that I care about what you care about. I think it's just a general respect thing in a situation or a where you're aspiring to work with someone long term, right? But in terms of um, these things, they're just here. They're just tools. I think you know people overthink intentionality, and people overthink like what it is to be aggressive when it comes to caring about other people. But really, if you're a Christian and it's really commanded of you in the Bible, like, hey, love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? So this isn't just about couples, this is about general growth. So most people think, when you read books like this, that it's just there for hey, only couples can read this book, only people who are in a relationship. And yeah, I recommend that for those people. But even if you're not in a relationship, reading this stuff, it's really a good read because it helps you be intentional and it helps you recognize what you want. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Prepare yourself, to be honest, even if you're not in a relationship. I think as a godly man or woman, it's good to have the information. I don't ever feel like this type of information can ever be, detrimental. You know what I mean? Like being able to have this early, if anything, it gets the ball rolling. And then when you have a partner, you can kind of introduce them to this. Where I actually got this information from was a friend of mine, Keisha, who was she's a Christian and she's married as well. And her husband actually went through that book before they got married together, as Christians. So she shared that book with me, and I want to thank her for that. But we actually did a podcast episode on this, episode 237, guys, to be exact. We're at 249 here, about 12 episodes ago, back in December. We did a whole episode on that. So if you're interested in hearing about the 9 essential conversations to have, like, I was so moved by it that I actually put on it. Check it out, guys. Back at episode 237. I just went and I looked back. 237, we have it, but definitely a great book. I have the audio version of it, not the hard copy, but it's like a 3-hour listen. Definitely worth it. Like you can knock that out quickly, like in one day. And I love the books too, Rich. I'll have to check out the other two. Well, the love languages, I am really privy to the love language stuff. And what I would say is I think that when you start dating somebody, it's good to talk about like love languages together. There's quizzes you can take too. That I did actually in my last relationship. We did a quiz to kind of see where we stood on like our love languages. So definitely recommend it. And anyone I date, that's how it is too. Like we do like the love language things to, be intentional. But another book, this was actually through our Connect group last year, that I will always say for men, and this is another episode I did on like the comprehensive instead of like the hyper masculine man. This is a mix of like a man who can be stoic, can be masculine, can lead as a man and be unmoved, unfazed, but at the same time can also communicate his needs. and they call that the comprehensive man in this book, the moment demands. And this is by Jason Wilson. Let me see if I could.
Awesome, man. And all this stuff, man, it encourages. It's the most manly thing because I feel like it encourages leadership with
Yeah,
any situation that you're in, any circumstance that you're in. You're gonna know what you're looking for. You're gonna know what's healthy and not healthy, and you're gonna know what boundaries to set for yourself and what's acceptable for you. And reading a lot of this content, so I think being a leader, knowing what you want, setting the tone for any relationship that you're in, but also having the openness to hear and listen, right? I think that's the number one underrated skill, right? Is we can do all this stuff and prepare and prep for all this stuff, but if you're not prepared to listen to your partner, if you're not prepared to kind of be give your partner grace, listen to them and understand where they're coming from and just be patient with them. I think none of it's all null and void, man. If you that's the number one thing you want to know how to do is listen first.
for sure. And a lot of times, guilty of it myself, for sure. We listen to respond, and we don't fully listen to what our partner, our friends, our family member, somebody in our community are saying to us. We're listening to respond, and that's something that we need to work on. It's okay. I mean, I feel like a lot of people do it. You
Me too,
know,
man. Me too.
yeah, we're all flawed. You know what I mean? Nobody's perfect. I've done it more times than I can count in my life, and it's just something that I'm trying to be better with too. And it's not just in relationships; it's in friendships, relationships with family members. Just being able to actively listen, and when you actually listen to people and you can repeat back what they tell you, you build actually deeper rapport with them. People actually feel more connected to you when you are able to actually listen. But people know that, bro. Like, when people aren't listening to you, right? Like, you're talking, but they're not. They're there. They're head nodding, but they're not actually listening to what you're saying.
Yeah, then they'll bring it back up later or something like that. Like they'll bring up the same question that you already answered later. Yeah, yeah, people definitely expose themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been there too. Like, I've been in past relationships get yelled at because like I was not like I've told you this before. It's like, yeah, like, so I'm not perfect. I don't sit here and try to act like I'm better than anybody because I definitely have failed in that area more times than I can count. But you know what? That's what makes you like recognize like, yo, I got to be better here, right? It's like the self-awareness. Like, hey, I got to be better here. I grew up with like ADHD too, so it was tough, to like focus. But it's like when you really start to you actually take the time to recognize these patterns and like, hey, I want to be better. Like, you really put it in. And I was gonna say that book too. I'm just gonna wrap this up here, but leave the book here. But this book, it actually breaks down. I have the audio for this too. It breaks down 10 different characteristics of men. So if you think that like, oh, men going to therapy is weak, here's the characteristics. So you got the dynamic characteristics, which are your outside characteristics, the fighter, the provider, and the leader, the outside ones. Then you got your deeper characteristics. You got 4 of these: the lover, the nurturer, the gentleman, and the friend. So it goes deeper, right? And then you got the final ones, the last 3 are the devotion characteristics: the husband, the father, and the son. So, at your roles as a man, there's a lot of roles. Men have a lot of hats to play in relationships, as do women. That's why I say like men and women coming together is such a beautiful thing because we balance each other in like such a powerful way. And we both have different roles and we bring different things to the table. So men and women, they wear a lot of different hats,
Yeah,
They
man.
really do.
I think that's what kind of emotional connection, and I think that's what um like that connection does kind of bring that out, right? Because it's like men and women, they say women are like cats, men are like dogs, right? Like, so there's we're different, right? And sometimes if you're not privy to your partner emotionally, or you're not communicating in the correct way, sometimes when those differences come out, it can actually cause you two to clash. Whereas what you really want, you want to really hit that sweet spot where you're just kind of, you have that communication to where you guys can kind of talk about it and understand each other in a way, and understand, hey, well, this is how I communicate. Again, why I recommend love languages, because uh, you know, there is the words of affirmation. Someone may say, "This is how I fill my cup," and someone who's not words of affirmation may be like, "Oh, are you insecure?" And it's like, well, no, everyone has a different way in which their cup is filled. Excuse me, and that's why it's so important to kind of respect that person's love language, and respect that there's acts of service, receiving gifts, quality time, and physical touch, right? And so this book is really about understanding what your partner's love languages are, so that you'll be able to fill your cup. Because what happens when the cup's not filled in a relationship, usually burnout happens, right? That's when usually arguments happen, right? Because you feel like you're not being heard. You feel like there's a lot of differentiation, a lot of just things that aren't going right, because hey, no one's taking the time out to have that emotional connection and understand each other to that level. And that's really important in any relationship, really. I'm not even just talking about romantic. I'm talking about friendships too, man. So that's why I say I recommend that book for anybody, because maybe you do have a friendship where, hey, you feel it kind of fading a little bit, or things just aren't the same as they used to be over the years. That's because one, people change, so even these love languages, over the years, someone's love language may jump and change, over time, based off of their characteristics, or their identity changing over time. And of course we have a core identity, right? But we have other things that fluctuate, like socioeconomic situations, right? Or statuses in terms of romantic. Maybe you have more time to hang with your friends when you're single than you did when you're in a relationship. So you're not able to have that quality time with a friend whose love language is quality time. So that could fall off. That's something that once you're aware of, you can be a little bit more intentional about being there for your friends, or being there for your family, your loved ones, whoever it may be.
Exactly. Yeah, because like you're right. People change over time, and like our love languages change, just like how our wants and needs change. I think people can outgrow each other too. Sometimes, unfortunately, some people stay stagnant, other people outgrow each other. But yeah, being able to understand each other's love languages is very, very critical. Because, like you said, if you're not being heard or understood, it can definitely lead to burnout. I've had those issues in past relationships too. We weren't always on the same page, or like then we have to get back on the same page. It happens. And I'm going to tell you right now, from anyone I know that's been long-term married, there's going to be seasons where you do fall off the same page. And it's about like, how do you communicate and how do you navigate in those times, right? Because everything's good in relationships or marriages, when the bills are paid and the sun is shining and everything's bliss, and you're not going through tough times. But how do you navigate when you're in the trenches, right? And you guys are struggling, and like that is how you navigate. That's why I think that book, The 9 Essential Conversations to Have Before I Say I Do, is important. I really am a firm believer in premarital counseling, to be able to go through that with your partner, have those hard conversations. And the whole point of that book is you want to get to the point where you have a doubt-free wedding day. So what I mean by that is you get to the altar, or you get to up to like when you go to actually exchange your vows with your partner. You don't want to have any doubts. You want to be able to say, hey, I had these conversations up front. Could crazy circumstances happen? Sure. I'm not saying divorce is absolutely not going to happen if you do this, but it will significantly limit the risk of it. I promise you that, from anyone I know that's gone through these conversations. Because as long as both people go into premarital counseling being completely real, I mean, like not bullshitting, not sugarcoating, going in completely honest with each other. And those are some hard conversations. And it actually suggests, for the tough ones, to suggest like to look to, church counsel, so there's somebody to mediate. But I'm like, you have these conversations, you start to realize if this person is really going to be in the trenches with you when life gets tough. And that's what you want in a partner. I always say this: love is not some crazy, passionate feeling and all that stuff. Yeah, sure. Passion and chemistry, I think, are very important and need to be there for sure. But this is not some fairy tale movie that we see on Lifetime or Hollywood or Disney, like where it's constant highs, right? And it's like all passion and everything's like beautiful. Yeah, that's not real love. Like me and Rich were talking about this earlier. That's attachment. And it's not actual love. Real love is intentional. I always say that. And it's funny. I have people saying like, oh, I know Steve's going to say intentional, but seriously, it's intentional. I know I know someone out there, if you're watching, I know like you're going to say like, oh, Steve always says intentional, but I'm serious when I say that. It's a choice. You got to find the person that's willing to go through the hard times with you every single day. They're willing to wake up and choose you, no matter how much you're going through. You two are willing to work at it. I'm not just saying choose the person and then they're not making changes. I'm talking about two people who are willing to adapt, who are willing to grow together, and are willing to compromise for one another. It's a choice. It's
And I
not
feel
something.
yeah, man, I feel like it's the same concept with us and self-care as well, man. So, like, I feel like you have to make a choice to want to care about yourself enough to go to therapy as a man, right? And it's the same thing with women, it's the same thing with anyone. It's the same thing like you just said in a relationship. You have to choose that person every day, right? If you're
Yeah,
serious about that person. You have to make that choice every day. Um,
yeah,
that you're gonna be intentional about that person, but then also on top of that, with men going to therapy, we have to be intentional about being real with ourselves every day about what is it or where are my weak points? Where is it where I feel like um hey, maybe I could be doing a little bit better in this area. Maybe I could be reacting a little bit better in this area of my life. What steps do I need to take to make that happen?
yeah. Exactly, exactly. And that's where it starts. Men and women both. Like we need to. We'll speak from the men's side of it. But yeah, as men, we need to take accountability for our shortcomings and how can we be better, right? And we want to do it not even just for our partner, because of course that's important, right? That obviously, that's the person. Like we want to be better for them. We want to be better for them. We want to be better for the kids. But we need to be better for ourselves, right? Like you have to look at it through the lens that God is watching you too. Like you are God's son. You are God's son. Women, you are God's daughter. You have to look at it at the lens like I wasn't built here to be in this life of distraction or be in this life of, whatever your shortcomings are in this life. Like we want to be better, but it starts number one with taking accountability. Taking accountability for our shortcomings and being like, how do we make it better? Like Rich said, when it comes to self-care, men actively choosing therapy. Like that's a form of self-care. And a lot of men are starting to look at therapy like it's like you said, the younger generation, right, Rich? Like 18 to 24. They're starting to look at it as like a normal thing to do, like going to the dentist or getting your checkup, going to the doctor, once a year to get your annual. Like this is start or going to the dentist every 6 months. This is becoming like a form of taking care of ourselves, like going to therapy. And like I said, we go to the gym to take care of ourselves, right? We eat healthy, or diet to like have a balanced diet to take care of ourselves. Well, you can take care of yourself mentally too. Just like I feel like therapy feeds your mental. I think church, or diving into the scripture or praying to God, it feeds your soul. Like these are forms of self-care. And when we take these, we show up as our best self, and you want to be with a partner too who helps you grow. Like you guys grow together. You want to be better for each other. I think that's the best thing. I think that's one of the best things in the world. Being able to find that. Um,
Yeah, I agree, most definitely, but before you can even find that or before you can even provide that, um, because you gotta be able to do it for yourself, right? And that's how you know how to give that to someone else, and then that's how you know what to look for and what you need in yourself. And so, um, yeah, man, it's like a muscle, it's a mental. I sent some statistics to you to post up there, but yeah, man, it's like a mental muscle, man. Like just like how you work out in the gym, man, and just like how you go to church spiritually. Mental health is a muscle that needs to be constantly, worked on. And listen, showing stability in all three of those areas, it show as a man, you're showing your partner that, hey, if I'm stable in all three of these areas and I'm able to be that listening ear, but I am able to also establish boundaries for myself that protect me and you. I think that shows a certain level of maturity there that is actually not the most common. So Steve is posting some of the statistics in terms of the age factors here
yeah, yeah.
up there in the chat. Sorry, it's a lot of content. It's a lot
Yeah,
of
so
stuff.
it goes to multiple comments because it's a lot, but I'll read them out loud. Yeah, Rich actually just sent this to me. So it says here's some of the statistics that Rich just sent over from his research. It says approximately 15 to 17% of men in the U.S. have received mental health treatment or counseling in the past year, while men are significantly less likely to seek therapy than women, with studies showing about one-third of therapy patients are male. This number has increased due to reduced stigma Key statistics on men in therapy usage rate: about 15% of men received mental health. Scroll down. Treatment in this past year, compared to roughly 25% of women. So that's a big one. So we're seeing men are up to 15%, women at 25%. It's not that much of a disparity. And it says only 40% of men with a recent mental illness receive treatment, compared to 52% of women. Not too far off. It says younger men 18 to 44 are more likely to seek therapy, about 17.8%. That's what Rich said earlier, compared to older men, though usage generally decreases with age. Traditional masculine norms and stigma contribute to over 70% of young men avoiding mental health care. And that's what it is, man. It's the stigma that kind of keeps men stuck. But I think as more of these men are going to start to see, people in their groups, right, start going to therapy, it's going to encourage them to go too, and it still is a positive, because we're seeing an increase in this. And then what this means is men who are going to therapy, like imagine like you're a man now and you're going to therapy, and now you raise sons of your own, right? Now your sons are going to see you going to therapy, and this is going to encourage them to go to therapy as they get older. And this is how we break the generational curses. This is how we break the stigmas, is we lead by example. And men in general are supposed to lead by example. This is literally biblical. Like we lead our wives by example. Like I always say, leaders aren't dictators. We're servant leaders in the Bible, right? Biblically. We lay down our principles by like example, how we lead our family. So, as our sons or family members, right? Maybe our brothers, like our, friends, they start seeing us going to therapy. Maybe it's going to encourage them to go too. So this is a positive, man.
Yeah, man. I just want to speak from experience for a minute, because I know that some people may feel like um, mental health professionals probably don't think about this. Maybe some people may wonder what a mental health professional, what's their take on it for themselves personally. Like, hey, are you giving me advice that you wouldn't take yourself? No, no, we take this advice for ourselves. Like, we carry a lot of weight. We carry a lot of clients that we have to tend to, that we have to make sure we're giving you guys the right, giving you guys the right strategies slash interventions, working through your day to day, perspectives, and we're just trying to be there and be present for our clients. And in order to be there and present for our clients, we have to get the proper, professional help. So I've been in therapy um, in the past, and at some point during my program, it was almost like a requirement. They since taken that requirement away, but I do think that I've never had an issue with that requirement. I think maybe it was the amount of hours. I think it was like a significant amount of hours that it required at our university. Anyways, the important thing is that my personal experience and our group, we've had older men than us with families talk about going to therapy and seeking help and things. And I think that I don't know. I can't speak for Steve, but I can speak for myself. It's definitely encouraged me and normalize that for me to be able to, hey, it's okay, men, to be open. It's okay to talk to other people. It's okay for us to even as professionals, it's okay, because um, why preach something that you don't practice, right? Why? And then on top of that, if there's resources, if there's support that's there for you and that's there to encourage your growth, why not take that step? You know what I mean? I think it's a, godly thing to do. Not only the godly thing to do, it's the manly thing to do, right? To be aware, self-aware of where you are in your walk, and what you require from um yourself on a daily basis, and being aware of, hey, what is the world asking of us? Because I feel like, in this society, a lot is asked of men, right? And it's a weight that we have to carry, right? And sometimes we may be so focused on goals, or so focused on getting to a certain point in society or in life, that sometimes our mental goes in the back burner, right? due to schedules, due to just significant upkeep in terms of house and car and career path, and sometimes mental health can take a back seat, man, and that's where things could go downhill, and maintaining a whole bunch of things. And this is not even just for men, this is for women, this is even kids, man. Like, even I've seen kids who as part of active range sports, where they're I mentor kids who are coming up in high school, who are athletes, who are basketball players. And I've seen kids get burnout. I've seen kids get overwhelmed with expectations put on them from their parents, right? And the same thing can happen in marriages. The same thing can happen on your own. Just you putting high expectations on yourself to achieve, to be at a certain point in life. So make sure that you're taking care of yourself, right? And make sure that you're aware of how you speak to yourself, how you talk to yourself, how your partner talks to you. And even if there's any kids watching, be aware of how your parents are talking to you, and be normalize communicating when something is not okay for you. Normalize communicating when what you need from your partners, and normalize communicating what you need from yourself. Um, and normalize positive affirmations to yourself on a daily basis, because we should be kind to ourselves, right? We should show self love. So normalize those things.
Yeah, how you speak to yourself is so important. Like you said, there's a lot of expectations and pressures that get put onto the world. Women deal with their own, but men deal with our own too. Like, pressure of, like, as providers, as protectors, as leaders, right? Like, there's a lot that goes on to that. In terms of what we're expected as men, and you have to take care of yourself, right? Like, therapy is a good outlet for that, but, like, you have to take care of yourself. It's for sure. Like, it's very, very beneficial. And, like, if you're actually able to attend, I wanted to go through just quickly some of the benefits that I had here for men. And I have some quick ones, but then I had a study too that I see. Let's see if I can pull my notes up here. So one of the biggest ones is improved relationships. Like I said, that could be romantic, it could be friendships. Men often learn to move beyond fixing problems towards active listening and vulnerability, which it can foster deeper connections with partners and children. So therapy can really help with that. It can help us move beyond the fixing, like, I put that in, like, quotations, like, fixing problems, emphasis on that, towards active listening and vulnerability. Practical stress management for sure too, like Rich was just saying. There's a lot that gets put on us as men, so therapy, it helps kind of provide the tools that we can utilize, such as, like, there's a ton of tools we can use out here. One of them that I've seen before, my therapist had actually talked about this, is the Eisenhower matrix. So what this is utilized for is it's utilized to prioritize, like, work tasks and relaxation exercises, like deep breathing and lowering, like, physical tension. So there's a lot of different ways there's a lot of different tools that you can get out of therapy that are really beneficial. It helps you also redefine masculinity, right? This is what we talked about earlier too. It allows men to create a personal definition of manhood that includes emotional resilience and self-awareness rather than just suppression. And we're talking just specifically in this episode on men, but women do too. Women suppress too. It really depends on your upbringing and how you were wired and taught. It's just that men are more known to do this. This is a big thing with men, like, being known to do this. But therapy really helps you redefine masculinity. It really does, so that we can build emotional resilience and we can become a more emotionally mature, and emotionally intelligent. Another one is physical health gains too. So I was saying this earlier too. Chronic stress, right? Chronic stress can lead to things like cardiovascular issues with our heart. Chronic pain in our bodies, right? I don't know about you guys, but I have struggled in my life with, like, every once in a while getting, like, tension up in my, like, neck and, like, upper back area. I also work at a desk a lot too, so I'm looking at screens, but you carry a lot of tension in your body when you're stressed. and pain management, like all these types of things. Like if you can reduce your stress levels, this is going to be able to help provide you with a little bit of a healthier life, right? It'll reduce your stress, and then it'll be able to improve your cardiovascular health. It'll be able to improve your pain management, all these types of things. And one of the big ones for men, I'll put this one here: anger and impulse control. Um, I think we can. I think we can relate as men. Sometimes we lose our cool, we lose our center. Um, particularly you see this with men with like road rage, right? Like out when they're driving. I've been there before too. You could be having a great day, and then people just bring you off your center. Especially people we love, right? Like whether it's your partner, or, your friends, your family members, parents, and how to get under your skin more than anything. And I feel like, I'm proud of myself. How like I don't. My initial thing is when somebody comes at me out of frustration, I tend to take a step back and just be like, and just like take a moment to like pause before I react. Not all the time because I'm not a robot, right? But I've become a lot better at that. Where it's like, I had somebody, I had a family member yell at me the other day and got like pissed off about something. It was just completely irrational what they were getting mad about. Like I'm not saying like people don't have valid things, but it was just something like so minuscule. And I literally went and just like, this was how corny. I like pat him on the shoulder and I was like, it's all right. It's not that like, you know what I mean? Instead of like getting pissed off or lashing out, but you start to recognize these things, right? Men definitely have impulsivity. We have a lot of impulses. We get angry quickly a lot of times. But men can identify the early warning signs through therapy of rage, underlying stress issues, and sadness. And I just want to bring up a story for you guys. I would share it, but I think I don't want to be too crazy on time. Fusion Church, the church that I go to over in New Jersey, there was a story on a couple. It was an Easter Sunday service, and they put their video on the screen, and the couple was struggling in their marriage. The guy was working a lot of overtime. The wife didn't feel seen. It came to a point where they had a child together, but they didn't have God at the center of their life. They wound up like divorcing and going their separate ways, but they still had a kid together. Afterwards, they both sought therapy, sought the church. So she started working on addressing her childhood wounds, and he had anger issues. So he struggled with anger. He was a police officer, worked a lot of overtime, struggled with anger. And there is a stigma with police officers. A lot of them, they're very emotionally cold, right? They're quick to anger. And that's not a shot at any of my police, force friends out there, because I got some brothers that are in the force, and I love you all, and I appreciate you guys protecting us. But it is because, and it doesn't make them bad people. It's just the field that they work in, right? They're real numb because they see a lot of BS. They see a lot of craziness on the other day, especially Philadelphia police officers. I mean, shit, what these guys are seeing here is crazy. EMTs, another one, right? You see dead bodies, you see crazy stuff. That stuff will really numb you, to your feelings. But he was self-aware enough to recognize that he had issues that he wanted to work on, and they were able to reconcile their marriage and able to come back. They also started to go to church. They found fusion, and they put Christ at the center of their life. And I do think that you're able to turn things around, but it takes a lot of self-awareness. Like Rich said, we as men have to be able to have this self-awareness and be able to work on these things. But yeah, anger is a big one with men. You see this a lot, and just emotional unavailability, right? I don't think this is a lost cause for men. I really do think that you can figure this out. I think the later you go in life without addressing these things, though, the harder it becomes. Imagine trying to change this at 30 or trying to change it at 65. Big difference.
Yeah, it gets harder and harder. Statistics state it gets harder and harder the older you get, right? The longer you've been set in those habits, the longer you've been learning how to live with those habits. So the earlier you confront those habits, the better. But yeah, man, it's one of those things where stress can get to us as men. It's a lot on our shoulders. It's a lot of societal expectations. I mean, there's a lot, and women too. Women as well. There's the pressures to fit into that that picture of what's in those magazines, right? Those pictures of those models, those, or celebrities that they try to kind of push on women. And if you're not at this point, and that's why you see the upticks in the BBLs, right? That's why you see a lot of women getting a lot of work done, man. And men now are getting a lot of work done too now. So you hear about the looks maxing culture and things like that, man. That is just kind
So
of going down all the way to Gen Z, man. So it's starting even earlier now. So this is kind of why we try to, talk about the importance of um really working on our self-respect, right? And our self-confidence, right? Um, and it's okay to seek help for that, because you may come from a household where um that wasn't encouraged for you to have that self-confidence or that self-respect. And so some people, they have to obtain that on their own because they didn't have, the upbringing that some other people had to where that was just encouraged. So yeah, it's a very important, and things like that come out in situations such as road rage or anger or fighting, right? Or substance abuse, or just how you even talk to other people in general and interact with other people on a daily basis, right? If you find yourself thinking to yourself, man, why did I just say that? Or why did I just do that? Or maybe it's something deeper, and it's a symptom of a deeper, long-term thing that you may want to confront is maybe you had a parent, right? Maybe you had a family member, maybe you had a partner that in the past talked to you like this, and you were kind of traumatized, or treated you a certain way and you were kind of traumatized by it. You want to confront those things. You don't want to take those things into the next situation. You don't want to take um, those feelings of distrust, of pain, of fear, of just these types of feelings and behaviors. You really don't want to take that into the next situation. You really want to do yourself a solid and seek that help. Um, Maybe you can't afford that help. There's still tools, right? There's still resources that we have online. There's still resources and videos that we have, just like how someone can go on YouTube and learn how to ride a bike, right? You can go on YouTube and look up, ways that you can give yourself daily affirmations, or ways that you can give yourself strategies, right? Because let's be real, not everyone has the money to afford a professional. Um,
it's true.
but in that, you can still, the good thing about our society is, and again, this is not a recommendation for or replace actual therapy. This is just a resource, right, for those who can't afford it, and or um, people who this could help. Um, there are YouTube channels, there are articles, there is free help that you can get from the state, especially women. I believe that the state of New Jersey does offer women free therapy help. And there's groups that you can join similar to me and Steve, whether it's church groups, whether it's because all those things do pour into that cup of self-growth, do pour into that cup of self-care.
They really, really do. Yeah, and the power of community is a big thing. It is just like what you were saying here. There and like I love that you brought those points up too, brother, because yeah, there's people that might struggle through their job. They might not have insurance to be able to attend or afford surgery. I mean, surgery, therapy, where they can't afford therapy. But there's a lot of good resources out there too. There's YouTube channels. There's one of the big ones that I will say. This is like it talks about all different things like childhood wounding, attachment styles. This woman, Thais Gibson, runs it. It's called the Personal Development School, and it's a free YouTube channel. Like you don't have to pay anything to subscribe to it, but she does offer like paid course stuff that's probably cheaper than like if you don't have insurance and you have to pay $300 a session for therapy. It'd be cheaper to get the coursework stuff, right? Like in that instance until you get insurance. But there's a lot of resources out there that you can utilize. Like Rich said, there's the power of community too. There's church counsel. There's counseling at churches too. The church that I go to, they have pastoral counseling services. So, where like you don't pay anything for that. That's through the church. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of resources and community too, Rich. That's a big one too. Like you said, the groups. There's a lot of women's groups. There's men's groups. There's couples groups, and then there's There was even one, there's ones for single mothers, right? Dads, there's dad groups too, so there's a lot of like resources out here. You got to find your community and find your village. And yeah, we weren't built to be in this life alone. I'm gonna tell you that right now. We weren't built to do life alone. We were built to connect with people and to be able to, that's literally, we as humans are wired for connection. So I do want to address the comments here. So Zach said, "That sounds like my brother. He's a cop." Yeah, man. I got a couple friends, that are cops, man. And it's just definitely a stigma in terms of anger and like emotional coldness. Doesn't mean things can't change. It's just the field. And I want to address your other comments too. He had said earlier, facts, love isn't a feeling, it's a choice. Absolutely, brother. Absolutely, it is, man. But yeah, there's a lot of resources out there. I think you're gonna find like you're just genuinely not gonna be as angry. You're gonna feel more content with yourself. It's honestly about pouring love into yourself. That's what I would say. Like we talked about this earlier, Rich. Like you can't fully love somebody else. I'm talking about any of the relationships in your life when you don't love yourself. You have to pour love and respect into yourself, and that's what God wants for you because God loves you, right? He gives us grace. His son died on the cross for us. So, in Jesus in Christ, he died. We just had Easter Sunday this past Sunday. Shout out to the homie Jesus. I'm just slaying, rising from the dead.
Yeah,
Shout
doing
out to
that
the
big
homie.
favor. That's a big solid.
Yes, sir. Shout out to the homie. He's still out here though. The ascension's in what 40 days. So, but yeah. So if you guys aren't familiar, like Christ rises. Crucifixion was last Friday, and then Jesus rises on Sunday, right from the tomb, and then he's kind of just on the earth appearing to like the disciples and everybody for about 40 days before he ascends into heaven. And that's when the ascension hits. And then about 49 days, so 9 days after the ascension, 49 days after Easter, 9 days after the ascension, is when you hit Pentecost. And Pentecost is when the Holy Spirit came down into and was filled into, everybody. So, yeah, it's interesting. Shout out to the homie, dying for our sins. But
Yes.
yeah, you just
Amen.
think like I'm like everything that Jesus had been through, the sacrifices that we have to make in this life, they're minuscule compared to it. So, you know what I mean? We have
100%.
grace in our life. God loves us. He forgives us, and we're gonna mess up, guys. It's how it is. It's how life is. But insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. That's the thing. When you fail, you want to learn something from it, and that's the key. Because if we don't learn anything from it, we're just going to repeat past cycles. We're going to continue to repeat past mistakes, and then we're going to get stuck, and then we're going to complain. Why is my life this way? And then people start blaming everybody else. It's like, it's like your patterns are showing you. You're not literally things aren't going to change unless you make the change. You know.
Yeah, and the first step to that is being honest with yourself, right? Being, as men, let's be honest about where we are in our emotions and our self-control, right? And our self-awareness. But then on top of that, like I do want to say, like, and by the way, side note, Steve, like by the end of this, I do want us just to post some genuine resources. I know we have talk space for the teens. That's free therapy help. There's obviously the 988 number. We gotta drop that by the end of the night. That's the suicide crisis helpline. But dude, just to just drive home what you just said, about God's sacrifice and like giving other people grace, but also giving yourself grace. That's how you learn how to give other people grace, right? So
Yeah.
if there's any stressful situation going on in your life or anything where you just feel like it's too much going on, it's okay to seek that help. And I know like a lot of us as men, like we have that kind of like stubbornness to where we're, well, hey, I don't want to acknowledge that pride, right? That's talked about in the Bible, right? And it says in the Bible, pride comes before fall. So if there's any pride and not wanting to be open with others, or pride and not wanting to share, and there's like this part of you that's like, oh, well, I don't need that, or I don't have to do that, or um, let's put the pride aside, right? As men, let's go out, seek help, if you need it, and just be real with yourself. I think that's the most manly thing you can do is being nice. Here's Steve dropping just some resources, general resources, right?
Yeah.
For us in the Delaware Valley area. But I just think it's important, man, just I think God wants us to treat ourselves, right, with respect, right? Self respect, and then also um, love of oneself, but also put Him first, right? And how do we put God first? As Christians, me and you know, we're commanded that our well, one, we're told our body is a temple. Two, we're commanded to respect our bodies, right? And so, how do we do that? Right? Is we have to be honest with ourselves. Emotionally, we have to be honest with ourselves. In our mental space, we have to be honest with ourselves. In our spiritual space, and in our physical spaces as well. So, yeah,
Mind, body, and spirit. Absolutely. Yep. That's what it all is, man. It's accountability. Being honest, not being delusional. Yep. Yeah, so this is just some of the quick resources, guys. The words got a little jumbled here, but the National Suicide and Crisis Line, like Rich said, you can call or text 988. You got the Veterans Crisis Line for veterans out there that are struggling. You can call 988 or press 1 or text 838-255. You got the Crisis Text Line. You just text HOME to 741-741. And then there's Philadelphia Mental Delegate Hotline. This is 215-685-6440. Domestic violence and assault for to report that immediately. This is emergency. This is emergency support. I'll report. I'll put some general mental health ones out there too. If you feel like you're in a situation where there's domestic or sexual violence or sexual assault, call to safety 1-888-235-5333. And then there's Philadelphia resources, but there's also general mental health resources. I'll post this too. One of them actually is local here with Penn Medicine, but I'll put this here. I'm sorry,
I
guys.
got it.
The comments can only hold so much, so I had to kind of do two parts. But so SAMHSA, it's SAMHSA. Is the national helpline is 1-800-662 /help HELP, which is 4357. For treatment referrals, you have the CDC mental health resources too, information on coping with stress, findsupport.gov, tool for finding mental health services, and then you have NIMH, and I've heard of this too. This is the guide to finding local providers and insurance support. Penn Medicine too. This is just a local resource for people in the area. It offers counseling and crisis response centers too. But there's a lot of good resources out here, guys. And you guys will be able to see these comments too, like after the episode's over too. Or if you guys are rewatching this, just hit pause or rewind, and you guys can pause the screen to like take a screenshot of these if you need them. But there's a lot of good resources out there for you. And we've done mental health episodes in the past too. I will shout out. I'm not sure if Leyla still works at Talia or not, but she used to. Talia Medical Center is THALIA Medical Center in Montgomery County. They offer a lot of good services too. One of them actually, when Bill Plymouth came on this podcast years ago, it's they offered that he didn't go there, but ketamine treatments. There's actually ketamine treatments too. People think of ketamine actually. You're taking ketamine, but you're taking it in a controlled environment. You're not like out on the streets taking ketamine. It's controlled environment ketamine. If you guys aren't familiar with Bill's story, go back. His story as he walked through his ketamine treatment was kind of crazy. Like by like his middle of his sessions, he saw some crazy stuff. That was a really popular episode, and like I definitely encourage you guys to go back. I'll have to find out which episode that was, but Bill's story was insanity. Like, I think that was the first episode he was ever on this podcast. So I know it's going like back to like 2022, but like, so we're going back like 4 years around this time. But man, that was a crazy, crazy story. I'm gonna find it for you guys though right now. Let me see. 4 years ago, where were we at? I'm gonna get this for you if I can get it. Let's see.
Yeah, man. I just think that stories like Bill's and like a lot of our other guests that we've had on here are like super encouraging and can really be like uplifting for people who maybe feel like alone in their situations or feel like hey, look, I'm going through a rough patch. I don't know if you understand. Hey, maybe we don't understand all the situations that everyone goes through, but we can definitely direct you to some people who've been through similar situations. We kind of got a big circle. So Steve has a lot of awesome guests and awesome people that come on this podcast. So I definitely encourage you guys to go back and watch Bill's episode.
Definitely. And it was episode 77. So it actually was almost 4 years ago to the day, April 7th, 2022. We hit it 4 years ago. So yeah, it was an episode on ketamine, and it also talked about Bill's background in Muay Thai fighting, Muay Thai. But honestly, that was very minimal. That was kind of towards the end. This was a 2 hour and 5 minute episode. So this was a long episode. But what I will say is Bill goes into detail about this medical center he went to and like had this whole walkthrough. Some of it's a little scary towards the middle, like where his like what it does to you. Like I can't imagine if that was the end of his treatment. It does. It rewires your brain. So if they would have let him out in like session 3 and like never brought him back, oh man, you'd be like mentally like messed up. Like this stuff really does rewire your brain. It makes you go through like a lot of deep stuff to kind of unpack all this stuff. But like I'll tell you, I'm telling you, it's definitely an interesting listen. Like if you guys have not been watching the podcast that long or haven't seen that episode, we're at 249 here. So this episode was episode 77. It was nearly 200 episodes ago. But I'm telling you, it got a lot of views on this one too, and this was a popular one. Definitely check that out.
Congrats on pushing 250, by the way. I didn't even throw it out there. I didn't even notice.
Yeah. Next week will be 250, man.
Yeah, man. Wow.
Crazy. I have to do something big for that. I know I already have the episode already planned out. Actually, next week is a fitness episode. We have Matt Lee coming on, and I think we might have my other buddy who's a fitness coach, Frank Veneziali. They've both been on before. I'm trying to get them both on at the same time. Matt's a definite. Frank might be coming on too. So, man, that'll be dope. But 250. Crazy.
Yeah, man. I just want to shout out like all the people tuned in, all the people on Facebook, all the people on YouTube.
Yeah, we have some comments on Facebook too. I saw. Is that your friend Bree?
Yeah. Showing love. Shout out to Bree. Shout out to Accelerate Church, the whole church, pastor, all my friends, Lori, like everyone who tuned in. Like I appreciate y'all. Just happy just to have that fellowship, and another thing for men that's really important and women is to have that fellowship, right? To have that community. I think it's really important to have that spiritual guidance, right? Whether it's a Bible study, a men's group, women's group, just even if it's like even things like substance abuse groups, um, very big. Lets you know you're not alone. Lets you know that there's other people in their walk and other people who are going through some of the same questions and going through some of the same barriers that we all as humans go through.
Yeah, no, that's how it is. Yep, it's just like I always say, there's power community is big. We were not alone. There's a difference between being comfortable with yourself to be able to do things alone, but also there's a fine line between that and like completely putting yourself into complete solitude and not being around other people at all. It takes a lot of support, and I found some people that don't have a lot of family support or friend support where they live. Finding that community in church, and like I said, a lot of these non-denominational Christian churches like Accelerate, like Fusion Church, another church, shout out Grace of God Church up in North Brunswick, New Jersey. A lot of these churches have these groups where you can literally, they're connect groups. I'm in one right now. I know Rich is in Bible study group right now. We were in a group together last year too, so like I said, men's groups, women's groups, couples groups, groups that aren't for couples, but they're just for men and women together. I'm in one of those groups right now. I'm actually in a financial freedom course through my church. So there you go. There's a lot of different things.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's these groups, man. I remember our group last year. It took us through some tough times, man, last year. So it was good just to be around other men who were, going through their own things, their own families, just like explaining, like, hey, man, like, hey, you think like if we have a family and that's it, like we have everything? No, dude, it's even harder when you have a family. We have to navigate not only just our needs, but we have to make sure that everyone else is provided for. We have to make sure that everyone else mentally, is in a good spot. And as men, like, we can't do that unless we're in a good spot. So, and
Agreed.
sometimes, like, that's how, things get misconstrued, in relationships, is when we're not taking care of ourselves first, and then making sure how can we take care of other people, and in those other capacities, how can we show up spiritually for our partners, or how can we show up emotionally, even physically, just being able to do stuff, man. I remember when I had gotten my injury, and I was with my partner at the time, and I, just being physically injured, and having to go through that spiritual battle. It was really tough. Um, Lost a lot of weight. I believe I lost like 30-40 pounds at that point in my life, and was weak. Just to share with everyone, like, I had a major surgery on my wrist, and didn't know if I would be able to keep my hand, man. And I mean, lo and behold, God brought me through. Obviously, I have both of my hands, so God brought me through. But it was just a really hard time in my life where it was just you feel like a shell of yourself, and the thing that brought me through that was, number one, God, but also the support systems, right? Lean into your support, lean into the people who are safe to talk to, and lean into a professional. If you feel like you're just not comfortable with where you are, or you're not comfortable with you feel like your circle isn't exactly encouraging you to be honest with your emotions, or maybe you're in an environment where it was always that kind of stigma, where it was like, what I'm talking about, like, where it's like, man up, like, we're not talking about this. We don't got time for that. I know that my family down south, in Georgia, they're really like, if you're going to a mental health professional, they're like, what's wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? So for me, I kind of help kick that stigma in my family personally, and say, hey, listen, like, just because someone's seeking professional help, it doesn't exactly mean there's an issue, as much as it means that they're just taking care of themselves.
Trying to
And
yeah, trying to be better.
if you can have a car that's running, dude. Like, you can have a car that's running every day, but if that engine light is on, or that whatever light is on for your car, that low air for your tire or whatever, like, if that light is on in your car, you're gonna want to take care of that, right? You don't want to wait until the situation or the problem gets worse. And it's the same concept for us as men. Like, when things start to you feel just something isn't exactly right, or something is trending towards a direction where, hey, this may seem like it's a problem. And like Steve mentioned earlier, that could be anger, that could be emotional reactions to situations that you typically don't react to in a certain way, or you just find yourself just not handling a situation in a way that's conducive to your growth, right? So you kind of want to nip that in the bud, and to do that, um, are you gonna go to, and I'm going right back to the car analogy. Are you gonna go to some, like, ragtag place that they don't take care of people's cars? Your car might come out worse than when you brought it in. Are you going to go to a place where maybe they'll do an oil change, or maybe are you gonna go to a car wash, right, when you need new brakes? No. Like, so you want to give yourself a part of self-love, right? And part of self-care is getting the proper level, and realizing where you really are, and getting the proper level of help.
Seriously. Yep. Exactly. Getting the proper level is critical, because there's different levels for it all. That's so critical. It definitely is, man. I actually put a poll up for you guys too. For any men out there, put a 1 or 2 in the chat if you want to answer this. It says, do you think you would consider going to therapy after watching this episode? Do you guys think? And then I guess, like, if you put yes, what kind of led you to that? And if no, like, is like, what's your hesitation on it? Because I think that I think that there's a lot that comes from this that you guys can really benefit. I don't care how well you're doing too. You could be so successful and be able to. I still think you could benefit. And all I'm saying is consider it. Like, I'm not saying you're going to go to therapy tomorrow. I'm just saying, like, was this something you would potentially consider? Yeah, our group last year, it really did teach us a lot. A lot of those men, me and Rich were 2 of the youngest guys in that group, actually. Last year, I think we were the 2 youngest, besides Gabe. think Gabe was the youngest, but we were like the second to everybody. And yet, no, that group did teach us a lot, man. It taught us a lot. I want to actually give a special shout out to Nate Evans. Nate, we know had gone through a lot last year. Him and his wife, fortunately, like everything that had happened. And I know he was very vocal. He's already been vocal about this on the podcast, so I'm willing to like share it here because he was on the podcast in December. Him and his wife had lost their baby after like 15 minutes after their baby was born. They had lost it, unfortunately. And Nate, this was in the middle of our Connect group that he was leading last year. I want to say God is so good, and he definitely restores and renews. Nate and his wife just had their baby this past Sunday on Easter Sunday. So congratulations to Nate. And Nate's actually coming on in about 2 weeks on the podcast. So, man, congratulations. God is good.
Love you, brother.
Yeah, and he restores and renews. So, man, that's a blessing. I was just talking to Nate on Monday. Man, like, so 12 months later, they were able to have their baby. And like one of the biggest things that helped them get through was they already had a son. I think his name's Amari. And he was a bundle of joy. And honestly, through it, kids, his son was about 2 or 3. So like they're so young that they don't really know what's going on, and they're running around. They keep them active. But I just found the strength that he had. Him and his wife took time to grieve, and he was there for her. But then he got back to his purpose and his mission. That's what God was calling him towards. So, it takes a lot of strength, man. I can't imagine my wife carrying a baby for the full 9 months, right? And then the baby's born, and it survives 15 minutes. Man, the trauma that comes with that, I cannot even imagine. So there was a lot of things that went on, and the guys, we got together a couple times in person, which was cool. We went bowling in Turnersville. We went to Bible study down in Atlantic City. That was cool. That was awesome though. We had shout out to the brothers, Josh, Edwin, Shelton, Justin.
Yep.
All the guys.
Shout out to the men's support group up at Fusion over there.
Yeah. Josh and his wife are doing big things over there.
Big things, man. It brought us through some times, man. Seek that help, man. Seek that community. That community is everything. But
changes your perspective for sure.
Definitely. You want to be around people who challenge you to grow, or people who can just listen. People who listen to you and make you feel heard. And sometimes you get that from different places, and one of them is definitely a support group.
Absolutely. Power of community. Man, this was a good episode. We got through a lot of things here. We talked about a lot of the resources, the benefits, everything that comes with this, man. I feel like a lot of people will be able to utilize this. We've done a lot of mental health episodes, but this one was specifically advocating for men. We did do a men's mental health episode before, but guys, therapy is important. We got to break the stigma.
Amen. Amen.
There's even professional athletes that are going to therapy, man. Remember Brandon Brooks? Remember when he was for the Eagles? Remember he was dealing with mental health issues? That former O-lineman?
Brandon Brooks, AJ Brown.
Yeah,
it's quite a few. It's quite a few guys. It's quite a few basketball players, baseball players, football players. Like, it's just like a lot of our athletes. And that's what Active Reign is about, guys. Like, this is what I made Active Reign Sportswear for, is to support young men, women who are trying to live an active lifestyle, trying to grow each and every day, but also want to mentally and spiritually be at their best too, not just physically. Because sometimes in order to reach our physical peaks, you got to be there mentally. You got to be there. Now some people can do it. Some people can reach a physical peak and mentally not be healthy all the way, but that's not the way you want to do it, guys. You want to do it the right way. You want to be physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually right.
Exactly. That's what you want. You want to make sure you're taking care of that mind, body, and spirit. You want to make sure that you're. I didn't mean to put notes on here. What is this time? had like a teleprompter thing on there. Yeah, I was just trying to turn the poll thing off, but yeah, no, it's important, to have that. You have to make sure your mind, body, and spirit are in check. When you have that right, it's like an engine, right? You're an engine. You have your physical, you have your emotional, you have your spiritual. And you want to be able to pour into each one of those. Therapy really helps you pour into that mental side, just like going to helps you tap into the physical side. It's like a muscle. It is like a muscle, man. I guess if we don't have any more comments, check Facebook real quick. Get ready to wrap up shortly. That's funny. I saw your message. Yeah, man. It's just yeah, man. We'll have to. This is a big thing. I'm telling you guys.
Yeah.
This is something you guys can take, and you can always reach out. You know what I mean? If you guys just want my experience through it or anything like that. I originally went to therapy just for boundaries in my personal life. In my career, I don't have any struggle with that. To be honest with you, it was more so in my personal life with people. I would struggle in that area, but career and professional wise, it was that was never an issue. It was just personal life when you have more like care for people that are close to you. But boundaries are essential, guys. Boundaries are essential. Got to be able to set those. I'm actually cool to wrap up in a sec, Rich. If you're cool with that, I think we have all the comments addressed and everything like that. If you guys watching the rebroadcast, still drop a comment in the chat, one or two. If you guys would consider therapy after this, I think it's big. We got to break that stigma.
Amen.
Amen.
Yeah, bro. I think we're good. I think we're at wraps, and also my laptop is at 5%, so that is also that too.
All right, cool. Well, first and foremost, I want to thank you for taking the time to come on tonight, brother. I appreciate you. Thank you for making the time.
Yeah, man. Anytime, man. I'm always whenever you need me. I'm here, man. This is the place, y'all. Whoever's tuning in, whoever will tune in, this is the spot. This is the spot to be right here for self growth. Steve has a plethora of professionals and people who are experienced, who know what they're doing, know what they're talking about. I will be one of those people. I am one of those people, but I will really, really, really be one of those people when my credentials. I'm there, guys. So be patient. You're going to see next to my name LMFT, licensed marriage and family therapist. So with that being said, appreciate you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, appreciate you, brother. I'm going to actually pray us out real quick before we actually close out here. Just want to say, Father God, please continue to pour into us as men and women. Continue to instill us with self-discipline and with self-control. Life is filled with temptations out here. The devil is working. Help us to navigate the life's hurdle, any of the temptations that we face. Help us with that self-control that we need in our lives. Help us build resilience and strength. Father God, continue to pour courage into us so that we may face any demons that we may be facing head on. Any life challenges, anything that we're scared of facing, face that head on. So honestly, a lot of times we get afraid with stagnation and things like that. Help us to face the tough challenges, including if therapy is a leap for a lot of people out there, help them to face this so that they can grow and then they can move forward with their life. And always, as always, continue to pour wisdom in us so that any trials and tribulations that we are facing, we may continue to seek you in those battles. In Jesus' name, I want to pray. Amen.
Amen, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you for that prayer.
Of course. I'm going to get in the habit of doing that more, like praying out, on these episodes, but and praying in too. But appreciate you, man. Yeah, this was a really, really good episode, man. I think a lot of people are going to learn from it. And we got a lot of good resources. We got a poll. We got a lot of good comments tonight. Shout out to everyone that commented and watched in tonight. Shout out to Zach for commenting in. Shout out to, I think my boy Monty commented in too. Shout out to him. Shout out to your friend Bree for commenting in.
Yes, thank you.
Shout out to all the viewers out there. Shout out to Mario. Shout out to Joy. Shout out to everyone else that was tuning in here tonight.
Appreciate you.
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you. But guys, with that being said, have a good night, good weekend. Next week, 250, it's episode 250. Be back at it. So we'll have Matt and hopefully Frank on too. But guys, we'll see you next week for episode 250. Take care. Be safe.
Stay locked in.
Stay locked in.